Hey guys. It's good to be back with another video. Today we're going, I think, to go to another episode, and I welcome you in this episode where we're going to continue reading the book Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. We're going to continue with the same 20 minutes reading today. We're going to start at page 77. So, I wish, let's have a good time reading. Page 77. The 3 practices of the Liberator. Among the multipliers we studied in our research, we found 3 common practices. Liberators, create space. Liberators, 1, create space. 2, demand people's best work. 3, and generate rapid learning cycles. We'll examine each in turn. 1. Create space. Everyone needs space. We need space to contribute and to work. Liberators don't take it for granted that people have the space they need. They deliberately carve out space for others to be able to make a contribution. They do so in the following ways. Release others by restraining yourself. It is a small victory to create a space for others to contribute, but it is a huge victory to maintain that space and resist the temptation to jump back in and consume it yourself. This is especially true in formal, hierarchical organizations where people are accustomed to deferring to their leaders. Ray Lane, former president of Oracle Corporation and current managing partner at Kleiner Perkins Venture Capital, is a master at executive restraint. One of his portfolio CEOs remarked, Ray has learned the importance of restraint in leadership. He knows that less is more, and he never wastes an opinion. When Ray goes on sales calls to meet with executives at a potential clients, 2 things are certain. 1, the client will want to hear from Ray and his vast experience, and 2, Ray will be prepared. But despite these forces pulling him in, he holds back. He makes a few opening pleasantries, but he lets the sales team do the deal. Issues come up in conversation that Ray has a point of view about, but still, he waits. The sales team, knowing full well that Ray could probably be doing a better job than they, continues their work nonetheless. When they are done, Ray then comes into the conversation. He still doesn't unleash his ideas and give a monologue. He has listened carefully and knows exactly what he wants to add. He dispenses his views in small but intense doses. A longtime colleague of Ray remarked, he'll often be quiet for long stretches of an important meeting. He listens to what others are saying, and when he does speak, everyone listens. Ray is well known as a brilliant strategist and perhaps one of the most articulate communicators in his business. But instead of overplaying himself and his own ideas, he creates room for others and uses his presence where it can have the greatest potential and impact for the team. Shift the ratio of listening to talking. Liberators are more than just good listeners. They are ferocious listeners. They listen to feed their hunger for knowledge. They listen to learn what other people know and add it to their own reservoir of knowledge. As management guru C.K. Prahalad said to me, how smart you are is defined by how clearly you can see the intellect of others. They listen intently because they are trying to learn and understand what other people know. John Brendan, one of Apple's top sales executives, runs an organization that brings in over $12 billion in revenue each year across 3 regions of the world. John is a high-energy sales leader and maintains an aggressive travel and meeting schedule So getting time on his calendar can be tough. But when his direct reports meet with him one-on-one, they get his whole presence. John listens intently to them and is keenly interested in understanding their reality. What is really happening on the ground with customers and with deals? He asks probing questions that get to the heart of the matter. One of his direct reports said, the difference with John is not that he listens, it is that he listens to an extreme. In a typical conversation, he spends 80% of the time listening and asking questions. By listening, asking, and probing, John develops an understanding of the realistics of the business and an understanding with his team of the opportunities and problems they face. This collective insight into the market has enabled John's organization to experience a phenomenal 375% growth over the last 5 years. John, who can certainly talk a good game himself, knows when it is time to listen. Liberators don't just listen the majority of time, they massively shift the ratio, listening most of the time. This creates space for others to share what they know. Operate consistently. Imagine a troop of young girls competing in double Dutch jump rope. Visualize the smooth, even rhythm of the turning ropes. The turners stand at the rope's ends and rapidly turn the two ropes in opposite directions. Their role is clear and vital. Maintain both a consistent arc and a constant speed. Their consistency is what makes it safe for the jumpers to enter the whirling space. On any erratic turns into or inconsistency, and a jumper can't enter or trips doing so. Consistency creates predictability. When leaders are consistent, it lets others know when they can drop in. It allows them to contribute. Operating with consistency is one of the most vital of the practices of the Liberator. In our interviews, we continually heard how multipliers operate with a consistency that enables others. For example, John Brendan was described as comfortable, consistent, confident, relaxed, and disarming. Craig Conway, former CEO of PeopleSoft, took emotion out of every situation. He put a consistently professional front to everything. The consistency of their actions creates two effects. One, it establishes a predictable pattern of behavior. This allows others to know when it is their turn and where there is space for them to contribute. Two, it creates safety. When people operate in predictable ways, we know what to expect and we become comfortable around them. This comfort allows people not only to jump in, but to do so with full power of thought. Recall how Robert Enslein's consistent leadership created a calming effect on his organization. He was able to contain stress instead of flowing it out to the organization. This consistency gave people the platform for transparency and the ability to focus on the real issues, delivering value to SAP customers, which in turn delivered revenue to the corporation. Level the playing field. In any formal organization, the playing field is rarely level, and certain voices are inherently advantaged. These include senior executives, influential thought leaders, critical organizations like product development or sales, and people with deep legacy knowledge. Unless managed, other voices that are perhaps closest to the real issues can become muffled. Liberators amplify these voices to extract maximum intelligence and give advantage to the leaders and voices on the lower end of the playing field. When Nick Riley, the first president and CEO of GM Daewoo Auto and Technology, GMDAT, took the reins, he brought together the American automaker and a very traditional Korean company. He also took explicit steps to level the playing field. Riley created a senior leadership team consisting of 4 Koreans, 3 Europeans, and 4 Americans. Riley, a native of the UK, knew that GM team was likely to dominate. Yes, it was clear to him that the success of the operation depended on the team's ability to draw onto the talent and intellectual assets of the former Daewoo members. Riley served as an amplifier, establishing systems for drawing out their contributions of the Korean team members, who were all in their mid-50s and initially spoke limited English. He made sure that all executive meetings were simultaneously translated into Korean. At every turn, he showed respect for the Korean team and the legacy Daewoo had built. He asked the Korean team members what aspects of Daewoo's culture needed to be preserved, and consequently protected them. He created learning teams by pairing Koreans and non-Koreans to work together and learn from each other. Out of these 2 cultures, he created a third joint culture based on a set of common values and a level playing field. The team created a new mission, vision, and values for the organization and began to embed them in the Korean operations. Under Riley's leadership, functional silos were seduced, and a company that had been on the brink of liquidation became a major revenue source for General Motors. It also became a hub for global small car design and development, with complete vehicles and kits for assembly at other GM facilities being sold in more than 150 countries worldwide, a 3,000% volume increase in 1 year alone. One senior executive stated, "The way Nick led this joint venture created a higher level of aspiration for all of us. GM Dad is not exempt from the challenge of today's business world and has recently posted a loss. But in October 2009, GM increased its ownership to stake in GM Dad to 70.1%, a strong statement of its belief in Korean unit. Riley now heads GM International Corporations, and in October 2009 was named an honorary citizen of Seoul. Liberators begin by creating space, but they do more than create space for others to contribute. Yes, they do provide the space, but they also expect extraordinary work in return. 2. Demand people's best work. Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State under Richard Nixon, was a master at putting people's best work. According to one story, his chief of staff once handed in a report he had written on an aspect of foreign policy. When Kissinger received the report, he asked simply, "Is this your best work?" The chief thought for a moment and, worried that his boss would think the report was not good enough, responded, "Mr. Kissinger, I think I do better. I think I can do better." So Kissinger gave the report back. 2 weeks later, the chief turned in the revised report. Kissinger kept it for a week and then sent it back with a note that said, "Are you sure this is your best work?" Realizing that something must have been missing, the chief once rewrote the report. This time, when he handed the report to his boss, he said, "Mr. Kissinger, this is my best work." Upon hearing this, Kissinger replied, "Then this time, I will read your report." Here are a few ways that liberators demand the best from those they work with. Defend the standard. Larry Gelwicks, the head coach of Highland Rugby, stood at the corner of a huddle of rugby players at the side of the field for the team's first game debrief of the season. Larry asked one question: "Did you give your best?" One player enthusiastically spoke up, "Well, we won, didn't we?" Not unkindly, Larry said. That's not the question I asked. Another player jumped in. We just dominated that team. We won 64-20. What more could you ask for? Larry said, when you came for tryouts, I said I expected your best. That means your best thinking out there as well as your best physical effort. Is that what you gave me today? What you give today? One player described one game played on the island of Tonga when he could answer yes to Larry's question. He said, I had a painful shoulder confusion after a devastating tackle on my opponent. I was ready to quit, ready to let my team down. I couldn't lift my arm and the pain was excruciating. I remember I began to chant the haka, a traditional Maori war chant. In my head, I remember looking over at the summit through the palm trees. At the very moment, the game seemed to stop, and I had a choice. A voice told me that I needed to keep going and do my best, not only for myself, but for who I am. And most importantly, for the team, for my brothers. The voice was the real collection of countless practices and games when Coach Gilrick simply asked, is that your best? I finished that game with 2 pieces led the equivalent of a touchdown, becoming the first high school American to score in Tonga. As a manager, you know when someone is below his or her usual performance. What is harder to know is whether people are giving everything they have to give. Asking whether people are giving their best gives them the opportunity to push themselves beyond their previous limits. It is a key reason why people report that multipliers get more than 100% intelligence out of them. Distinguish best work from outcomes. Requiring people's best work is differently from insisting on desired outcomes. Stress is created when people are expected to produce outcomes that are beyond their control, but they feel positive pressure when they are held to their best. K.R. Sridhar, CEO of Bloom Energy, innovator of green power generators globally, and a renowned scientist himself, has mastered the distinction in his company. He said, if you want your organization to take risks, you have to separate the experiment from the outcome. I have zero tolerance if someone does not run the experiment, but I don't hold them accountable for the outcome of the experiment. I only hold them accountable to execute. This is one of Bloom Energy's secrets for innovating across complex integrated technologies. KR understands the distinction between pressure and stress. He cites the famous image of William Tell shooting an apple off his son's head. In this scenario, William Tell feels pressure. His son feels stress. KR keeps the pressure on a team to act, but doesn't create stress by holding them accountable for outcomes beyond their control. 3. Generate rapid learning cycles. In studying multipliers, I have often wondered, how smart do you have to be a multiplier? The answer from Bill Campbell, chairman and former CEO of Intuit, was perfect. You have to be smart enough to learn. Perhaps most important, liberators give people permission to make mistakes and the obligation to learn from them. Admit and share mistakes. When Lutz Ziob took over as general manager of the education business at Microsoft in 2003, it was falling short of its goals for everyone in reach. Lutz needed to make progress faster. Could have created a stressful environment around him, but he needed the organization to be creative and take risks if they were to catch up in the market. It was a classic management dilemma. If you take the obvious path, the climate will become tense and your people may become risk averse. However, if you lessen the pressure by softening the goals, then your organization becomes complacent. Lutz did neither. Instead, he created an environment that was equal parts pressure and learning. Lutz never backed down from the natural pressure for the business to perform, but he made it safe for people to take risks and make mistakes. He did this by how he responded to both his ministry, his mistakes, and the mistakes of others. Lutz was shameless in speaking about his own mistakes. He loves to tell stories, and his favorites are about his mistakes. Instead of hiding his own mistakes or difficult them onto his staff, he confesses them. When he launched on out successful, when we launched on an unsuccessful product, he talked about it openly and what he learned from it. One member of his team didn't work out, he brings an intellectual curiosity for why things didn't work out. By taking his mistakes public, he made it safe for others to take risks and fail. All right, we're at page 85. We'll stop here. So thank you guys for following with me, and thank you for listening to this episode. I will continue in the next episode tomorrow. What I want to encourage you to do is, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, okay, please hit the subscribe button, please, that you could stay in touch with us. All right, and then leave us a comment, tell us what you think, and then don't forget to like the video. So thank you so much, guys. God bless, and bye-bye. Have a great weekend.